Okay, so in this video, we are looking at the two-step equation assignments. You guys are given three different two-step equations on Delta Math, and so I'm actually going to go through and model several examples. Okay, so the very first one you guys have, which should have said two-step equation one, these are the steps that I'm going to use to solve a two-step equation. So if you were focused on one-step equation, remember that one step you only had to take an inverse one time, and then with two steps, now you're doing it twice. So the steps we have here say circle the variable. So that's the very first thing I'm going to go ahead and do. Change the color. This is my variable, the negative 5x. So circling a variable, what it does is it helps you identify what value you want to get by itself. Once you do that, you're going to move the constant. Now, to move the constant, you're going to do one of two operations. You're either going to add the value or you're going to subtract. Okay. So let's look at it. We have negative 16 minus 5x is equal to a negative 16. In this case, our constant, remember that this definition of constant is a number without a variable, is 16. But it's negative. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and state what my inverse is to move my constant, and that is going to be to add. So again, you're either going to add or subtract. In this case, you're actually going to add. So I'm going to add 16 on both sides. Okay. This variable, I haven't done anything to it, so I'm literally just bringing it down. So we have a negative 5x. And then over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and combine my like terms. So negative 16 plus 16 is going to give me 0. Now, the step 2 is literally saying isolate your variable, also known as getting it by itself. So the operation that's being done here, we have negative 5x. This is understood as multiplication. So the inverse of multiplication in this case is to divide. Okay. So to get x by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5. Divide both sides by negative 5. My left side of the equation, negative 5 divided by negative 5, will cancel, leaving me with just x. And this other equation, on the right side, I have 0 divided by negative 5. In this case, my answer is going to give me 0. So this is how I would solve a two-step equation. So again, we're going to keep following this same pattern. You're going to circle the variable. You're going to move the constant by either adding or subtracting. And then you're going to isolate the variable. And in order to do that, you're going to take the inverse operation of whatever is being done to your variable. Let's look at the next example. So we have 11 is equal to negative 1 minus c over 2. Okay. Again, the very first thing I want to do is go ahead and circle my variable. In this case, my variable is negative c over 2. Okay. And I can change the color to make it a little more obvious. Let's go pink. So I already did the first thing, which is circle my variable. Now I want to move the constant. The constant on this side of my equation is this negative 1. Because the value is negative, my inverse to get rid of it will have to be to add. Okay. So you can either circle add, and I'm going to go ahead and write in here, I'm going to add. So step 1, move my constant, which is what I'm doing. I'm going to add 1 on both sides. So now I have 11 plus 1. It's going to give me 12. This negative 1 and positive 1 cancels itself out. And then the variable, I didn't do anything to it, so I'm bringing it down. Okay. So now I'm left with it's equal to a negative c over 2. Now, remember, guys, anytime you see division or a fraction, anytime you see a fraction, most of the time, you should think of division. So in this case, I have a negative c over 2. In order to solve for this equation, to get rid of division, my inverse is going to be to multiply. Okay? So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. On this left-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and simplify. So 2 times 12 is going to give me 24. And then on the right-hand side, it will cancel. So these 2's top, bottom will cancel. And so I'm left with 24 is equal to a negative c. Please, please, please always remember that your your variable can never be negative, okay? Your variable can never be negative. And I'll type that in. Make sure you guys should have this in your notes from when we went through equations. But if you don't, make sure you add that to your notes. When you solve, your variable can never be negative. Okay, so in order to, hold on one second, I want to put a star here, make sure everybody. So in order to solve for this, because I'm not done, I have one more step left to do, and that is going to be to divide by -1. So in this case, my negative, because it's an understood 1 in front of your variable, if it's nothing there, my -1 cancels over here. And so my final answer is going to be C is equal to a -24. So on this one, I actually had to do one extra step because again, your variable can never be negative, guys. So if you're doing the very first two-step equation one, you guys should be able to go ahead and work through these problems. And if you don't have this in your notes, use these steps here for your notes. So make sure you circle the variable. Once you do that, your first step will be to move the constants. You're either going to add or subtract. Then you're going to take the inverse, which is you adding or subtracting to get rid of the constant. And then you're going to isolate x or get it by itself. And the only way to do that is by taking the inverse, okay? So that's the first one. Now let's keep going. So you all guys also have one that says two-step equations 3, if I'm not mistaken. Or it might say multi-step equations 3, one of the two, depending on which group you're in. And the problems will look like this, which means that you'll have a fractional coefficient, which means that the the number in front of your variable will always be a fraction. Okay. But again, the steps for solving is the exact same. So first I want to go ahead and circle my variable. So again, I want to go ahead and circle my variable, which is 5 over 6b. Then I want to move my constant. Because this 12 is positive, the inverse will be to subtract. Okay, so I'm going to take the inverse, and the inverse is to subtract. I'm going to subtract 12 on both sides. And then I have 32 minus 12, which is going to give me 20. And then this is equal to 5 over 6b. Now, if you have a fraction that is a numerator and a denominator, which are if you have a fraction that's written with the numerator and denominator, this is the same thing as saying multiplication, guys. So the inverse here of any fraction, you guys are going to have to take the reciprocal, which again we talked about, and you should have this in your notes from prior weeks. But remember, the reciprocal means I'm going to flip my fraction. So my inverse will be to take the reciprocal, and the reciprocal, if I flip it, it's going to be 6 over 5. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 6 over 5. Or you can just put it in parentheses to represent multiplication. Over here on the over here on the right hand side, I'm gonna go ahead and cancel. So 6 and 6 will cancel top bottom. 5 and 5 will cancel top bottom. Okay. So this right hand side is just gonna give me my variable, which is b. And then the left hand side, I actually need to multiply. Now, if you want to make your life easier, you can literally just type this directly into Desmos, which I will model right now. So I'm gonna open a new tab. I'm gonna go to Desmos calculator, Desmos.com. I'll click Map Tools, Scientific Calculator, and then I'll just type in what I have. So we're doing 6 over 5 times 20. And it's going to give me 24. So in this case, my answer is 24. And if you want to pull your variable on the left hand side to make it look neater, that's fine. So B is equal to 24. So again, these examples I'm modeling is going to be labeled as two-step equations 3, or it's going to be labeled as multi-step equations 3, depending on which group that you are in. Now let's keep going. Let's look at the next example. So again, this is still having a fractional coefficient. So I have 51 is equal to 3 over 4b plus 9. First, I'm going to go ahead and circle my variable because I know that's the part I want to move get by itself. So I'm trying to move my constant. I have a positive 9 here. So the inverse would be to subtract. Okay. So I'm going to subtract 9 on both sides. On the left-hand side, I have 51 minus 9. 42. So 51 minus 9. Yeah, 42. Just double checking my numbers. So I have 42, and that's equal to 3 over 4b. Okay, I didn't do nothing but bring the variable down. Then, again, I need to multiply by the reciprocal to get rid of this fraction, which would be my last step. In this case, my reciprocal will be 4 over 3. So I'm going to do 4 over 3 on the left-hand side, because whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. And then I'm going to do 4 over 3 on the right-hand side, because that'll get my variable by itself. Now, on this right-hand side, again, the fractions will cancel. 3 and 3 top bottom cancels. 4 and 4 top bottom will cancel. So your right-hand side, you're left with just the variable b. And then from here, guys, again, you are able to use your calculator. So 4 over 3 times 42. I'm going to go back to Desmos calculator. I'm going to hit the blue button to get a new line. 4 over 3, and I'm timesing that by 42, which gives me 56. So in this case, b is equal to 56. Okay. So again, these two examples would be um, the multi-step equations 3 or two-step equations 3. Now, finally, these last two, if you guys are struggling, this would be the two-step equations part 2 or number 2 if you're working on your Delta Math assignments. Only difference with this one is you actually have decimals, so I definitely recommend that you use a calculator to get the decimal value. So again, the steps are exactly the same. I'm going to circle my variable so I know what I want to get by itself. I'm going to identify my inverse from my constant. Because 3.2 is positive, I know that I need to subtract. Okay, that's my inverse here. I'm going to subtract 3.2 on both sides. And I will definitely be using a calculator on this one. 3.2 minus 3.2 will cancel. Negative 1.6. So I'm bringing my variable down, negative 1.6. B, and then I need to subtract 9.12 minus 3.2. So let's go back to Desmos. 9.12 minus 3.2. It gave me 5.92. So let's go back. That will be, this is equal to 5.92. And then from here, this is already being multiplied, guys. So the inverse here would be to divide. So I'm going to divide by negative 1.6. And that will give me my final answer. So let's type this in the calculator. 5.92 divided by negative 1.6. So 5.92 2 divided by, I forgot the number. 1 second. Negative 1.6. Okay, and so my answer here will be a negative 3.7. So in this case, B is equal to negative 3.7. And again, this problem came directly from Delta Math. This would be two-step equations 2 with decimals. The next example, which is the last example I'm modeling, um, I have a negative a over 0.5 plus 3.9 is equal to negative 1.3. Again, the steps are going to be exactly the same. I'm going to go ahead and circle my variable. Then I need to identify what my inverse is to move my constant. In this case, I have a positive, a plus 3.9, so my inverse will be to subtract. So I'm going to subtract 3.9 on both sides. The left side will cancel because you have a positive and negative. I'm going to bring my variable down because I haven't done anything with it. So I have a negative a over 0.5 is equal to negative 1.3 minus 3.9. Guys, when you use your calculator, please type this exactly how you see it. So we have negative 1.3 minus 3.9. It's going to give me a negative 5.2. Okay. And then here I need to solve. So my operation is already division. So to undo or take the inverse of division, I need to multiply. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 0.5 or 1 half. This left hand side will cancel. I'm left with just a negative a. And then I need to find out what negative 5.2 times 0.5 is. Go back to Desmos calculator. Negative 5.2 times 0.5. It's going to give me a negative 2.6. Negative 2.6. And remember that your variable can never be a negative value. So to go ahead and divide by a negative 1, and all it does is change the signs. So in this case, your answer is now going to be positive. A is equal to a positive 2.6. Okay. And again, if you are completing your Delta Math, this is the two-step equations 2 assignment. If you guys have any additional questions, please let me know. Please come stay after school for tutorial. You can come see me during class time. You can send me a message in Verge, or you can send me an email. Have a great day. Bye.